Hello, folks. Welcome back to English 414, Methods of Research. This is going to be a video lecture on the second assignment, the MLA style worksheet exercise due in about a week. Today is Sunday, September 26th, so it's due a week from tomorrow, that is October 4th. And in the module itself, which scrolling down to the course schedule, there's, basic information about it, a link here to sample papers, which I'll show you in a little bit, and then the directions on how to submit the assignment as you did, the previous electronic scholarly review assignment. So what I'm going to be doing is using several documents to explain this exercise here. And the first will be, of course, the actual exercise. So if you were to, in the syllabus or in the module, click on this link right here, it will take you to this document here in our Google Drive. I'll also be using a file inside of our Google Drive that is the vast majority of the MLA handbook. This happens to be, as you can see, the 8th edition. MLA recently published this year, in fact, a 9th edition. But other than adding information, lots of images and citations and whatnot, there's fundamentally not a lot changed in terms of the style. And you're welcome to buy the 9th edition, the current 9th edition, but as I say here on the syllabus, this 8th edition is fine. It's the one that, I'm providing to you inside of our Google Drive. And I know there are quite a few history majors in this course, which is fine, but keep in mind that because this is a humanities-based discipline, as I explain here, MLA style is our profession standard. So history may have you format papers, essays, reports, or whatnot in either APA style or sometimes Chicago style, each of which has its own kind of system, if you will. And so you just need to follow whatever style your professor or instructor requires. But again, because this is an English course and methods of research in English, I'm using this MLA style. So another document I will be using aside from this handbook here is a sample of what they call containers, where, as you can see, color-coded here, each category has different information contained within that section. And then I'll be using several actual student papers, and these are genuine papers from real courses, real students and professors that appear on the MLA website. So if you go back to the assignment here, where I, again, repeat the submission instructions, the purpose of this, and then of course the directions, there's a link right here to sample papers. So you can either click this link and it'll take you right to this page of sample papers in MLA style. They're all PDF versions, or you can look inside of our, Google Drive, and I have all these papers already uploaded. So they're these papers right here. And, they're full, papers, they're full MLA style sample papers, and they're all pretty spot on perfect, which is why I included them. There's a lot of other information in this folder, of course, for our entire course. A couple of the images I'll be looking at here are these container samples. I'll explain what those mean. It is exactly what this says right here. It's a template, right, of understanding, okay, the first category or piece of contained information is the author, the second is the title, and so on. Anyhow, so again, if you were to click that link in the directions, you would get to this page. So your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to take all of these, and there are 10. I go over to the next page here. There are a total of 10 entries, if you will, in jumbled, mixed up, out of order form. And what you're supposed to do is use the information in the 10 entries below to compile an accurate works cited page by applying current MLA style container rules and formatting, which I'll explain here in a minute in terms of rules and formatting. And then it goes on to say, for example, be sure to include your surname with the page number in the upper right-hand corner, as MLA style indicates, so that the formatting of the entire assignment looks like the final page or pages of a research paper in MLA style, which of course includes 1-inch margins all the way around and double spacing throughout. So notice that all of these entries here not only have numbers at the beginning, which is not correct, which you'll have to remove, but you will have to put everything in double spacing format. So let me just look at, 1, 2, or 3 of these actual MLA papers that are in the Google Drive and show you in general what the MLA formatting looks like. So scrolling down, here is, the beginning of a works cited page, right? And notice that everything is double spaced. That is including the space between the heading works cited and the first entry. Everything is alphabetical. Now you may be wondering, wait a minute, P is not the first letter of the alphabet, right? Well, true, but there's a rule that I'll explain to you in this handbook here, and there's a lot of rules to follow. If I scroll down a bit here, right, about how to include authors' names and titles and whatnot. So MLA says that you do not count in terms of alphabetization the articles a, and, or the. So if a title begins with a, and, or the, and you need to alphabetize it, as you do here because there is no author, you see, then we disregard the and we start with the next word. In this case, it's B, and so BA comes before BE. Pretty simple logic. But again, everything is double spaced, and this is another paper to show you everything is double spaced. Okay, so going back to the assignment, it says that I encourage you to look at those papers, sample papers, and that yours should look as crisp and clean, polished as theirs. And also in B, which is the Latin abbreviation, scholarly abbreviation for nota bene. If you guys don't know that, you should learn it. It's used quite a bit in academic writing. I'm not sure Not sure that they'll abbreviate it here, but yeah, they don't abbreviate in that one, but so NB, right, is an abbreviation for nota bene or note well. Take this piece of information and note it well, right? So I have thrown in some curveballs, as I say here, that in a couple of these entries, it's not as cut and dry as you might think, right? So in terms of formatting, right, the document, all of this information here, you should already know how to do this, but again, some of you are history majors, so I can't be sure. I mean, ideally, you would learn or be introduced to MLA style as a junior or senior in high school. And then by the time you got to what we call English 101 or Freshman Comp 101, you would have that reinforced. And then the following or subsequent Freshman Composition 2 course, it would be almost like second nature. It should be for students who are English majors in a 300 or 400 level course, which this is, but I know unfortunately, a lot of our instructors do not either teach MLA style or teach it thoroughly and, hold it to standard. And I should back up and maybe mention the purpose of this assignment. It isn't worth a whole lot in terms of the overall course grade, right? So here's the module 2, right? It's worth 5%. And you may think, well, that's, half a letter grade, I'm not going to worry too much about it. But the tools, the skill set, knowledge base, if you will, that you use in an MLA works cited are the exact same tools that are expected of you in an annotated bibliography, because your bibliography contains works cited entries. So like if you just click on this link here, I'll take you to a sample annotated bibliography, which you will have to produce. And so the first page is just simply instruction, but you'll see here, right, that this is the works cited entry, right? Below it in sort of prose or narrative form is the annotation, where you, the student, explains about that source. So again, here's another works cited entry, and then below that is a kind of two or three sentence short paragraph about the source, and so on. So you're going to have to produce a annotated bibliography here in module 4 using MLA works cited entry format. And the sources in this bibliography should be the sources that you're using in your actual research paper. Again, if you have a course currently where the research paper is shorter, let's say a 5-page mini essay, as I believe Dr. Wynn has, then in this course, you will need to add a few pages to meet the minimum 8-page length requirement. As I explained in the first video lecture on the scholarly review, resource review, real college level, especially upper level essays, research papers are at least a minimum of 8 pages and usually more. In fact, if you look at all of these papers here, right, this is a history sophomore level, instead of 200, it's a 2000 level number, but the 2 in front of it means that it's a sophomore level. And this is a history course, and this student wrote, without the the images. I should point out, by the way, if you guys don't know, an image here, an image here, and so on. Those don't count toward the length of your typing. We say that because, of course, you could drop an image in on every page and call it, 8-page paper when it's really only 4. But, if you take away those images, her paper is at least, 8, maybe 8.5 pages. Here's English 300 class, like a junior level, upper level class. And this paper is, a full 8 pages, which is kind of, again, a minimum. This is, I'm not sure what AMS stands for, but it's a 200 level class, and this one happens to be, 7 pages short. So again, I'm not sure what this AMS class is. Anyway, the point of that, going back to the assignment, is that what you're learning here in the MLA Works Cited exercise due, in about a week from tomorrow, or a week from tomorrow on August or October 4th, is the kind of foundation for what you will do in the annotated bibliography and for your Works Cited in the research paper. All right, so going back to the assignment, I mentioned that, full documentation serves at least 3 functions. It allows your readers to locate and pinpoint your sources in the event they disbelieve your claims. So you need full and accurate information. So anyone, not just your professor, but anyone can find those sources. 2, it demonstrates transparency to your readers that in a necessary instance, you are announcing the sources you are relying on. That, you're not keeping it secret about where you're getting your sources, and you're, providing citation in the text, and then you're providing documentation in the Works Cited. And then 3, it allows your readers who may share an interest in your topic to locate sources. So, like, let's say hypothetically you were interested in doing a paper on Langston Hughes, and you're reading this paper by Aaliyah Gonzalez here about Hughes and Morrison, and then you came down to her Works Cited entry, and you're like, oh, well, maybe, yeah, this book here about Whiteout, The Continuing Significance of Racism by Routledge in 2000, collection of edited essays or chapters. Maybe, I want to check out either this particular chapter or article, or chapter, not article, in it beginning on page 21 to 34. Maybe that's interesting to me, or maybe another one of these is interesting, right? And so what might be called references in APA or bibliography and Chicago style, but is called Works Cited in MLA. These provide you, the reader, with potential sources to follow up on to add to your own research. So there are multiple reasons why we do this, not just as a torture, though it might feel like it. So you have all of these 10 sources in jumbled order, and I'm going to sort of demonstrate here how to kind of generally, if you will, format. Now, everything is currently in, all I did was copy and paste these, they're in the same order. I simply took off the numbering at the beginning, right? Because there is no, this is not the CSE, the scientific method or engineering method of documenting your sources, which does in fact use numbering, nor is this the, like, formal version of Chicago style with footnotes that use numbers, or a British style called the MHRA that uses numbers. It's MLA style, and we do not use any numbering in the works cited page for the entries. The only places where numbers occur, numerals occur, like in dates and page numbers and whatnot. So the first thing you want to do is make sure your cursor is at the very beginning of the document. And then you want to insert a page number. Remember, the directions say here that you need to include your surname with the page number in the upper right-hand corner, right? I don't recommend you using what are called paper templates, that you find online, like someone has a Microsoft Word MLA paper template and you just kind of plug in the variables. I would only recommend that if you are very proficient in Microsoft Word, because what those documents do is they come pre-formatted, if you will, right? And they're not always formatted the way MLA requires it to be. So there can be some coding in the background that you may not be aware of. And once you start typing and, maybe even print out your paper, it will turn out wrong in terms of formatting. So I would always recommend beginning with a completely new blank document. And once you learn the fundamentals of MLA style, it's really pretty streamlined and straightforward. So make sure your cursor is at the beginning of the document. And then you want to insert a page number. So I'm working here in Word that is I believe it's the 2019 version. Yeah, it's the 2019 version of Word for Mac. So my menu up here may look a little bit different than yours that you're using either in your laptop or in Office 365 that is available through Grambling's, using your student Gmail, whether you're using Outlook or PowerPoint. So you want to insert a page number. In this case, I would go to Insert and then scroll down to Page Numbers right there. And then a little dialog box is going to emerge. And it's going to ask you, where do you want your page number? Well, MLA style requires that it's always in the upper right-hand corner. So I want it on the top of the page and on the right, okay? You can put it different places, but it's in the right. Because we want it to look like, going back to the student papers, right? We want it to look like this. Your surname, not my name, but your surname, space, the page number. So upper right. And once you click this, it's going to put over here in a kind of, not imaginary, but kind of separate background, if you will, called a header. And that number is going to be kind of grayed out compared to the font here. So there you go. Did I do something wrong here? Oh, it's not clicked on. Sorry. It's not actually clicked on the page. Top right. Why is it not doing this for me? Make me look like a fool. Insert page number. Top right. Header. Oh, I did not have this clicked. Sorry. The computer is only as smart as its user. So show number on first page. You can suppress this. That is, you can, depending on your instructor. Let me show you why that feature is available. And it has to do with, preference and formatting. So some instructors will say, because your name already appears on the first page in the heading, that putting your name up here is redundant. And you don't need to tell us it's page 1 because it's clearly the beginning of the document, right? But pretty much every MLA document I see has included both, and I would recommend you including both, your name in the header, obviously, and then in the upper right. So going back to my document here, yes, I want it to appear on the first page. Okay, so what I just said is that it's going to create this number up here, but it's going to be kind of grayed out because the document coding considers this now a header, sort of separate from your body text, if you will. But what you need to do is continue to format it to make it look like the others. So you double click on the number. Once you double click on it, it will, so you can see here the header division, right? And it's kind of everything, the blue line and above. You need to do a couple of things here. One, you need to add your own surname. So, I'm just going to type in surname, or how about Doe? It's John Doe, Jane Doe. And notice you need that space in between, okay, part of the formatting. But we're not done yet. We have to ensure that the font and the font size is exactly the same as your body text. So to confirm that, right, notice here that Leah Gonzalez has chosen, as most people do, for academic writing, Times New Roman 12 point, or here, this Meg Mathias, Times New Roman 12 point. So what you do is you put your surname in, then you highlight the whole thing and go to your home tab or ribbon, as it's called, and you select the exact same font face. This is called, these are all font faces. The font face and the exact same size, right? So once you've done that, then you can double click anywhere outside of the blue header, right? And even though this is kind of grayed out, it will actually print out as black. It's just visually showing you here that, visually showing you that this is considered the header and it's not considered like the main text here, right? Now, the cool thing about doing this page numbering, many of you know, or I hope you know, is let's say I, of course, need to put everything in double space form, right? Which again, if you remember the works cited of MLA style, everything including the heading everything is double spaced. In fact, just a rule of thumb, everything in MLA style is double spaced, regardless of whether it's like here, a subheading inside of your paper, or whether it's a block indented quotation, everything is the same. And that's the basic logic of MLA. It's to keep everything streamlined and simple. There's no special, all caps, bolding, italics, or whatnot for titles and stuff. Well, italics for titles, certain titles. So let's say, going back to after doing the page number, I take everything, I highlight, well, I don't know if you guys know, and if you want to quickly select everything in a document, and that's the only thing that's in this document is those 10 entries that I copied and pasted from the assignment, there's a command called Control A or Select All, which is right here. So you can go under Edit and Select All, or if you happen to know the command, it's just Control A, and it, it highlights everything in the body text. Notice it doesn't highlight the header because that's not considered part of the body text. And then, we know that according to MLA, everything needs to be double spaced, right? So the easy way to do it, you can go up here to Format and click on Paragraph, right? And that'll bring up a dialog box and you can select the heading. The easy way to do it is just simply once you have, again, I'll show you Control A, select everything, is to click on any of the highlighted text, or I should say right click on it, and it brings up sort of a mini menu where you can select paragraph, and you select double spacing, right? And it gives you a little preview, and boom. Well, that made everything, if I zoom out, it made everything double spaced, but what it also did was, unfortunately, because let me go back and do what I did. Notice that there is already, this is single space, this is single space, this is single space, but between each of the entries, there's an extra space, right? So that means that when you double space everything, it's going to create that extra line in between that you do not need and should not have. So once you put all the line spacing in double, you need to go back and then just remove all of this, okay? Now, this looks confusing once I start going through it, because you're like, well, wait a minute. Make sure I get that extra line right there. Because now everything looks all flush left, right? But after, again, this has to do with the coding of the document. After every entry, right? Like here, this is the end of an entry, or here, this is the end of an entry, or here, right? There is a behind the scenes, what is called a hard return, where you literally hit enter and create, like a new paragraph. And so it looks kind of all jumbled here off on the left because everything is like, run together, flush left. But once you have, again, double spaced everything, there's another formatting technique you need to use. And that's called the hanging indent. So let me show you what that looks like. You probably already know it, but I'm going to explain it to you and then show you how to do it. So it's called hanging indent because the first line is left hanging by itself. And all of these subsequent lines are indented 0.5 inches or half an inch or 1 tab. Okay. And the reason we do this is because when we put a works cited set of entries in alphabetical order, then our eyes can quickly scan down the left-hand margin because they're all in alphabetical order, right? So the way you're supposed to read an academic document is, let's say, I'm going to look for a citation here. Let me just go to the very first one. So here in line 2 in parenthetical citation, she's already identified who the author or source is, Hughes's poem, right? And she doesn't need to say Langston Hughes because he is not only mentioned here in the title, right, but she mentions him fully here in the first paragraph. And that's a formatting technique you need to get in the habit of doing, which is upon first mention of a source of an author, you give the first full name, and thereafter you simply just give the surname. It's redundant, unnecessary, repetitive to keep saying Toni Morrison, Toni Morrison, Toni Morrison, and so on. So sentence begins here, Hughes's poem, ... right, to line 2. Okay. So that means we can go to, and we're expecting to see this poem, I Am the Darker Brother. We're expecting to see this poem and Hughes, because now we know the author, in the works cited. And we're going to look for it alphabetically, because the left-hand hanging indent should reveal that to us. And look, there it is, Hughes. And then the poem, I Too, inside the Norton Anthology of American Literature, subtitled 1865 to the Present. It's edited by Robert S. Levine, a shorter 9th edition, because there are different editions of this anthology, published by W.W. Norton, the publisher, in 2017. And the poem is on page 1039 of this anthology. Okay, pretty simple, but that is the logic of why we use, what do you call it? The hanging indent. See, here's another one. Try not to use either Morrison or Hughes. Here, this sentence here. There's a lead in to a quotation, then we have the quotation. We don't know who the quotation is being said by until we get to the in-text citation, Anderson 29. So that means we can scroll down to the works cited, see that, and say, okay, there's Anderson, right? And there's that chapter we already talked about inside of this book, Whiteout. And notice the page number above cited was page 29, which of course falls within this page range of 21 to 34. Okay. So once you have put everything in double space and you have, removed those extra lines so that everything's, double space, you can make all of this a hanging indent, okay? And you do the same thing. That is, you do a Control A or select all. So, see, I've highlighted everything with Control A. And by the way, you see now that we've added double spacing that we now have an automatic page 2, which is precisely why you need to do the insert page formatting that I showed you earlier, because it creates consecutive pagination. So once you have this, you can do this hanging indent one of 2 ways, and one is much easier than the other. So again, we're looking for this kind of formatting where, the first name or word is left hanging by itself off to the left margin, and everything else is indented half a space. This may look odd to you. This is a digression, but this important African-American scholar and theorist born Gloria Watkins, who teaches at Berea College in Kentucky, I believe still, she adopted the name Bell Hooks. And she, as a kind of feminist move, kind of like the poet E.E. Cummings to a certain degree, she deliberately spells her name in lowercase and has been doing so for a long time. So the author is spelling it the way that the name appears in this essay, in this edited collection. Anyhow, that's a digression. My apologies. So again, once you have everything highlighted again, you can either move this little Second, I don't know if you can see, I can't blow up this here because it's not part of the, like I can blow up the text itself, but the tools, the ruler, I can't. So there are three little tabs, if you will. There's a triangle facing downward, a triangle facing upward, and then this little left margin rectangle at the bottom. Excuse me. So you don't want to move this left margin, right? Because that'll just move everything over. You don't want the bottom. And you don't want the first line indent, right? Because this is right here, this is the opposite formatting of what we want. So what you want instead is this middle triangle, if you can. It's difficult to kind of latch onto. But there it is, okay? So that's exactly what we want. We want the subsequent lines to be indented 1/2 inch. And we know it's 1/2 inch because you can see the ruler up here. This is 0, this is 1, this is 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4. If you do not have this ruler on, you're going to be kind of in a world of hurt for documenting formatting any document, whether APA, Chicago, or MLA. The ruler is in Word is under View. Like, what things do you want to view on the page? So if I click ruler off, because it's now, you can see it here, then you don't know how to, pull that tab over, right? So I would recommend you always want to have view ruler on, okay? So that is the first way to do it. And I don't think that's as easy as the second way. The second way, I think, is much easier. It involves a couple of clicks. Because again, it's hard to kind of latch on to your cursor to this middle kind of triangle and then drag it. So again, the easy way to do it is select everything, then right click on any of the highlighted text, go to paragraph, and then not the line spacing, but right above it under indentation. What kind of indentation? That special kind called hanging. And then once you click that, it'll give you, a version down here of what it'll look like, and then say, okay, boom. Super simple. Everything is now in indented, hanging indented format. What you need to do after you've formatted your document, by the way, I left out a crucial step here. It should have been obvious. That is, the entire heading, of course, needs to be there, double spaced, but also it is centered. That's the only special thing about this heading, is that it's centered as opposed to, flush left. And now what you have to do is determine, okay, what information in each of these entries belongs and doesn't belong, and then in what order, in what, in terms of the containers that I'm going to show you here. So it's best to kind of try to wrap your head around what kind of work or source this is. So it says, the first one, a novel. So it's a book entitled Sense and Sensibility by Jane Austen, published in 3 volumes in London by Thomas Egerton in 1811. So you have all of the information in there that you need to create a full, correct, documented MLA style entry. Excuse me. What you have to do is understand that it's a book, and then ask, okay, well, what is MLA's formatting for books, right? And you find that information in this document here, the MLA Handbook 8th edition, that begins, as you can see here, on page 19, I've included in this file pages 19 through, I think it's 58. And then there's a separate file of the details, right? So there's a lot of information here, but what they're discussing in this main section are all the possibilities in, like of how do you put authors' names in MLA style? What if it's 2 authors? What if it's 3 or more authors? What if there is no author? The title of a source. So is it a book? Is it the name of a painting, a ship, a poem, a short story? All kinds of different sources we have, YouTube video, a tweet, and so on. The title of the container typically means like the book. If let's say it's an edited collection where different chapters are authored by, let's think of an anthology like we just talked about, right? Let's see if I can find that one. Like right here, right? So this is the author. That's the container section for the author. This is the title. So we're not talking here about the title of the anthology. This is the title of the anthology. But we're talking about the title of the poem that is being quoted up above in the essay. And then following that is, okay, where can this poem be found? Well, it can be found in this anthology. And that anthology is edited by 1 or more people. And then typically there's an edition. If it's the first edition, you don't write anything. You don't write first edition. Then you need a publisher. Then you need the year. And because this particular poem is being cited, then inside of that anthology is page 1039 where the poem can be found. Well, going back to this first entry, right? A novel is not an anthology, right? A novel is a standalone thing. Now, a novel can appear and often does appear in an anthology, right? It's like if there's a British literature anthology of Romanticism, which I teach, they can include like Frankenstein, or in this case, Sense and Sensibility, the entire novel inside of the anthology, and then you would treat it like that other Norton example. Excuse me, sorry, my voice is very scratchy today, even though I'm drinking water. And so, yeah, all of the information is there. You just need to find out how to put it in the right order. So this takes us to what are called the containers, right? In your folder or Google Drive, right, there are a couple of images here. And they basically lay out, what's called here a template. Okay. So the first category, of course, is author. Now, sometimes you will not have an author, especially for web sources. But that doesn't mean you don't include them. You do include them, of course, in your documentation on the Works Cited, but you go to the next thing to alphabetize the entry. So if there's no author, then you would then alphabetize it according to the title of the source. Just like that previous MLA, let's see, was it that one? No, what was this first one? Yes, so this very first entry here, also, from the web, as you can see, disaster songs from Canada, CA is the domain for Canada, that there is no author to this ballad, which makes sense because old folk songs typically do not have, authors per se. They're like oral tradition handed down over the centuries. but you would alphabetize it according to the title. That's what that template is showing you here. Then the second container of information, right? There's container 1, 2, right? Contains all of the kind of pertinent details to the information after the title of the source. So in this case, right, it was the, to use that Hughes example, it was Hughes, Langston, and then the title was I2 in quotation marks because it's a poem, and we put poems and short stories and journal articles, scholarly articles in quotation marks, as opposed to bigger, longer, more important works like a novel or a play or an anthology or a ship or a portrait. Those things MLA says to italicize. So here would be the Norton Anthology of African American Literature, I think it was. Contributors, in that case, it was, the editor, Robert Levine. Version, meaning like, what edition, is there another number, like a supplemental number, which sometimes there is, and publisher, publication date, and location. The location for a novel would be included probably here with the publisher. I'll show you that. And then container 2 is sort of a version of that, but this is if there's an article or a database article, as I'll show you. Here's an example of this template using down here. I don't know if you can see this, an EBSCOhost database article. The specific database, right, is here, the Academic Search Complete. But all of this other information is kind of straightforward. You have the author's name, you have the title, again, in quotation marks, because it's the title of an article. The more important thing, the bigger thing, is not the article, but it's the actual journal itself. In this case, called Critical Quarterly, so it's italicized, comma. And then the number has to do, in this case, with the volume and issue number. I explained this in the first video of the scholarly electronic resource, but I'll just briefly do it here again. So the volume typically represents the year. And so theoretically, this Critical Quarterly has been in publication up to 2015 for 57 years. And number 1 means that this is probably the spring issue, or whenever the journal started. If it started in fall, then fall of 57 years ago would be its issue number 1. But generally speaking, and I have to qualify that because some journals come out only 3 or 2 times a year, but generally speaking, academic journals are published 4 times a year. So usually every season, fall, spring, winter, summer. And each one is assigned a number. So number 1, 2, 3, 4, each issue. So this is volume and issue number. And the publication date, April 2015, and the what we call inclusive pagination numbers. In other words, this article called Tyrion's Gallantry starts on page 86 and ends on page 98. And it was found inside of Academic Search Complete, which is part of the EBSCOhost databases. So that's what MLA means by containers. It's not too complicated, right? But what you need to know is like, okay, when you're looking at the assignment, this one, for example. Well, okay, we have the author's name, right? We know that it's an essay, but it's an online essay, so there's no print page numbers to it. We have the title of the essay already inside of inside of quotation marks. It occurs on a website called Romantic Circles, and there's a series called Praxis, and that series contains a collection of essays entitled Circulations, Romanticism, and the Black Atlantic. And that collection of essays, Circulations, was edited by Paul Youngquist. So that means you would need to look at the containers and go, okay, what goes where, right? There is, in fact, there's a tweet. There is, in fact, in this file that I've included, the MLA handbook, a way to do tweets, right? So what I've just gone through here, kind of very quickly, is the what they call the container method, which they outline. Let's see, where is it? Here on page 20, right? This right here. I mean, MLA used to not use this logic, if you will, of containers. They just used, sections or parts of an entry. But there's a lot of information in this file, very kind of specific and technical information about works cited entries, right? But I don't know if you guys know, when you can do this, you can highlight a PDF file like this, and you can highlight it, or take your cursor, run it over. That means it's called OCR, or optical character readable, and therefore you can, in a PDF file, you can search for things, right? So if you are looking for, go back here to the assignment, you're looking for, something about a tweet, right? How do I format a tweet? Then you can go to this document and do a simple control find. The find property is, our command is right here. So if you're working on a PC, HP, Dell, or whatever, that'll say control instead of this little Apple symbol for control. But you just do that, and it'll bring up a dialog box, as you can see here. Type in whatever words you're looking for, and it will find it, or find however many versions of it, right? And so here you can see it says there are 6 instances. So you just hit return, and oh, look, right? There's one way to do it. So when you have pseudonyms, right? This is what this section is telling you about pseudonyms. People's handle, if you will, on Twitter. But here's how you do it, right? The handle, whatever the status or the tweet was, Twitter italicized, the date of when that appeared and time, and then the actual, if it's available, right, the actual link to it. So you just follow that format, right? Here's another one. And then you would say, okay, well, I got most of the information here. I just need to put it in the right order, correctly, accurately formatted. This is an email message, right? And you go like, oh, well, okay, same thing in that document. This is a pretty long document. How do I, or where can I find email? If there is no, yeah, you see the difference there, right? Again, a computer is only as smart as its user. I originally typed it like most people do, with no hyphen, but in this particular file or document, they do hyphenate it right here. And it says, when you document an email message, use its subject as the title. The subject is enclosed in quotation marks because, you know, it's like the title of an article or poem. And so here's the basic format for doing an email, right? And then you would take that format and you would apply it to, in this case, this entry. So it's not meant to be a killer assignment, really. It's just meant to get you guys to start thinking with accuracy, you know, precision, consistency. And that is the kind of nature, not just of this assignment, but of any kind of what we call style, APA, Chicago, MLA, and so on. There are a bunch of different styles. AP style, as the Associated Press uses. The trick to getting style correct is precision and consistency. That you have, you know, attention to detail, I guess you might say, that old adage, you know, that the devil is in the details. So the devil of getting a great grade on any assignment like this is being precise and consistent, that you treat the same kind of entries in the same way. Speaking of entries, I just have one kind of last thing to say here at the end. Notice that a number of these contain web links or URLs, right? So currently, the 9th edition MLA recommends that you use the entire full web address or URL. So if we go back to those student samples, there will be some in here, like right here. And right here. Honestly, though, I am personally, as your instructor, not a fan of using the entire URL for a couple of reasons. One, websites change their server information periodically. So like here's a, you know, a newspaper called Cape Breton Post. Cape Breton is in Nova Scotia, you know, part of Canada. Remember, this is apparently a paper about this Canadian ballad. So this website called CapeBretonPost.com, they may change their, you know, their folder. So maybe in a year, this may not be called news, but it may be called, I don't know, information, you know, or something else. And if they don't, that is the company itself and this website, if they don't create what's called a redirect command. So like, you know, you were to, you know, take this whole URL and copy it and put it in, let's see if I can do this. I just copied it. If we were to put it into, you know, a web address or right here, are we going to get the exact same article? Hopefully, yes. And I think we did. Let me make sure. Does this have? Yes. So yeah, there is no, again, no author, but you then alphabetize it. You know, DE to DI, you alphabetize it according to the author. So that's what you do right here. Also, speaking of which, notice, and this is MLA style, you would be wrong to, I would understand why you would do it, but you would be wrong in MLA style terms. See how there are only certain words that are capitalized right here, as you know, the first word did and Spring Hill because it's a proper noun. But if you look at the MLA style of the student, how she did it, she did it correctly, which is you capitalize all important words. You capitalize the first word, of course, you capitalize the last word, and you capitalize all words that are typically 5 letters or more, right? So C, minors is a noun, C is a verb, bump is an adjective. This is the last word in the title, because so you have a title and then a subtitle to this whole article. So what I'm pointing out is, even though it did not appear italicized, or excuse me, capitalized the way she did it here, you are required to do that in MLA style. That is to say, you are required to take something like this and render it with capital letters. So like capital M, capital S, capital B, and so on. Anyhow, my point was, like, let's say that you typed in this, web address, but it didn't yield anything, or gave you a broken link, an error 404 kind of thing. That would happen because this website, capebreton.com, or actually, see, it's a different website altogether, right? I'm going to show you, this is exactly what I'm talking about with web addresses. So here's what I pasted, right? capebretonpost.com, okay? And then I'm going to hit return to get that, what she actually included as the web address. But when I do, it's going to change the actual server and website name to Saltwire, which means theoretically Saltwire, this company, has bought out capebreton.com, okay? Right, Saltwire, powered by, right? So that could change radically, and in the future, none of us may be able to find that source. So what I often tell students to do is not to worry about the entire, web address, but just do a shortened version of it, like capebreton, post.com, because if it's going to take us to another server anyway, then we can search for, Spring Hill miners or whatever. Also, there's another reason. Let me see if I can find it here, that I don't recommend URLs. So here's an example of a YouTube, right? A couple, actually. So you can, of course, quote, cite, paraphrase from a YouTube video. It's information. And this is the basic format, how to do it. But what I'm trying to point out with the URLs is that right here, notice that in this particular one, there's an underscore right here. It's not a space, it's an underline or underscore. But as many of you know, if you were to type this, this is a PDF file, or let me just copy and paste this. Show you what I'm talking about inside of Word. So I'm gonna do an insert page break. So insert break, what kind? Page break. And now I'm on a new page, page 3, because I want to keep this separate from all of this. If I just paste this URL in here, right? And if I were to hit return after it, you type along, and it's 7S as it is, and then you hit the space, what's going to happen? It's going to highlight it to blue. In other words, it's going to hyperlink it automatically. So what I want you to see, what I want you to see is that underscore has now almost become invisible to the viewer, because the hyperlinking done automatically by Microsoft Word kind of obscures that, right? And if you were to print this out, it would look exactly like this. And if you didn't use a LaserJet, really good printer, right, then this may look like a space, right? And you wouldn't necessarily know this. So this is why I'm saying that using the full URL for, works cited entries is, I'm not a fan, but you can go ahead and do it if you want. Okay, I think that's it, folks, for this assignment. It's due a week from tomorrow, because I'm going to post this today, Sunday, September 26th. And you have this entire document to look at in terms of how to follow, whether it's is it a journal article, is it an email message, is it a tweet, is it a book, is and so on, right? Like, let's see, I'll just go to the beginning of the document here. So at the beginning, it's often helpful to put your cursor at the beginning of a document before you do a search. That way you're searching from top to bottom, if you will. So this, third or second one here says, okay, it's a poem, right? When you have the author's name and where it appeared. So let's see, what does it say about a poem? How do we deal with poems, right? Well, okay, there you go. Collection of poems, right? Different ways to treat a poem, especially if it's an anthology. So it's helpful to have this document and search it as necessary. If you have questions about any of this, certainly inbox me in Canvas, but I think it's kind of straightforward. And yeah, this is your upcoming assignment. So if you haven't already started working on it, please do. It's, again, a little more complicated than you think once you start it. And by the way, here's an example of that, this very long URL, right? But it happens to have an underscore right there, which could cause complications. Anyhow, all right, folks, be well, and I will catch you on the flip side for the research paper proposal that's due later. All right, take care. Bye-bye.